What's going on, beautiful people? Welcome back to week 8 of Community Permaculture. This week we're talking about the work of the amazing Vandana Shiva. She is a seed sovereignty advocate, a food sovereignty advocate. She's a physicist by training, a quantum physicist actually. Amazing, multifaceted woman. This is just a very brief general introduction to some of her thoughts. But I told you we'd have some of her coming up, and I am on the road. This is going to be a quicker week again. Next week, for the next 2 weeks, we should have more sort of complete wrap up. But her work is vast and deep and very important, and I'd like to get you, if you're not yet familiar, introduced to her. So to do that, I highly recommend, this is, unlike other weeks, I'm going to start with recommending the deep dive to you. So this is the full hour and 20-minute video on the future of food, dictatorship or democracy. I feel like it frames very important questions very well. She's at once personable and complete in her approach, in a sense, I'd say, very accessible, and yet she has some very profound insights philosophically and in terms of practical food systems discussions. So if you can, invest that hour and 20 minutes and or less if you speed up the YouTube watch speed or whatever. If you'd like, there are 30 minutes, just 3 simple videos that kind of also can explain a lot, get you a sense of what she's about, and give you something very practical to start doing. So the final video of those 30 is on seed saving, and it's a how-to video that she made with Farmer Rishi, who's a great Los Angeles local food, gardening educator, food sovereignty advocate as well himself. And so let me dive in just quickly to a few points of her larger talk, because I really want y'all to, I want to whet your appetite for more of her. Essentially, she points out how a mechanistic, essentially patriarchal, sort of, myopic, linear, monocultural view of agriculture is destroying us, the planet, the basis of freedom, of art, of anything else we could love. We all need to eat. And when people aim to control the food supply from the ground up, literally from the basis, from the genetic origin of the food that we eat all the way to consumption, we have some serious dangers that I think we should be warned about, and we should begin to do things to counteract or support things that are already being done to counteract that kind of dictatorial control. So I feel like that talk very clearly frames what I think we need to be focused on, or one of the main things I think we need to be focused on if we want to have all the cool things we like, good healthy food, health without, dependence on tons of medicine, art, culture, all these things depend on us having some form of food democracy. One point that she makes that I think kind of, in a way, sums up some of the ridiculousness and the confusion that's happening is like the last question that I think is asked in that talk is about what's the difference between modern day genetically modified organisms and the fact that we've always been hybridizing plants and selecting plants to get the sort of crops that we want to eat. She begins by making the vastly important point that back in the days when and even now when we're making new varieties of domesticated crops, we're taking genetics from that same species and recombining them, or just selecting it to push the genetics in a certain direction, or a larger, sweeter tomato, or whatever it is. Or we want to combine the purple carrot with the red carrot with the yellow carrot genes to create a swirly, rainbow carrot or whatever. As silly as that might seem or look, and even maybe dangerous to some people, it's still working within that same species according to the laws of reproduction that nature has established for that species. So, pollinate the one flower with the pollen from the other flower, and you're going to get a mixture. You then select amongst that mixture the ones that you prefer, that you want to eat, etc., and you have food. Great. You have larger carrots, you have more resilient, whatever it is. We did then start to, obviously when you graft something onto another tree, you're starting to combine 2 different species maybe. Generally it's from within that same sort of family. So you'll have, the top of a citrus go on another more hardy rootstock citrus So even then when you're doing that, you're staying kind of within the genetic ballpark. When you're, as we're doing now, taking Bacillus thuringiensis or whatever, taking bacteria genes and putting them into plants, or we're even crazier, taking human growth hormone genes and putting them into pigs, or et cetera, then we're in a whole new territory of Island of Dr. Moreau, Frankenstein weirdness. And in those cases, it's not to say that those should never be done. I don't know that, that's a really common thing, but, they say our mitochondrial DNA itself is a bacteria that started living within us. I don't think there's zero precedent in nature for that to happen. I do think that caution in proceeding along those lines of kind of willy-nilly combining species for profit motives seems very important. And that's that last statement exemplifies the second thing, which she doesn't touch on directly in answering that question, but I think her whole talk kind of should imply this and or directly maybe even says it somewhere. The second difference is that in the past, when the farmer made that new carrot variety, he didn't necessarily patent it and say, this is mine, nobody else can use it. If I find that seed, I'm going to come after you and make sure that you can't grow this thing that I made. That sort of arrogance didn't seem appropriate, I would assume, right, to someone who's like, yeah, I combined something I didn't create with something I didn't create. To me, the idea of combining a Bacillus thuringiensis and a corn and jamming the bacterial gene into the corn and then claiming that that's yours, to me sounds as insane as someone taking, because I come from the music world, someone taking a Beatles song and jamming a Jimi Hendrix solo into the middle of it and then saying that's mine, that I own that no one else can use that for anything else. It seems like this insane, you didn't create either of those, you combined them, that's great, points for creativity, cool. But in this case, we don't even know what the consequences of that combination will be. That Beatles / Jimi Hendrix song can't reproduce itself, can't spread its genes to other songs, can't start changing the song gene pool. But this genetically modified soybean or corn or whatever can do that. And we really don't know what that's going to lead to. We do know that some of these things are maybe, for all intents and purposes, fairly harmless. We also know that some of them are very harmful. And anyway, so in the case of having very little control over how life begins to evolve from these monstrosities that we create, seems like the kind of sci-fi scientific basic precaution that we should have. The ridiculousness of the idea of patenting life that you didn't create just because you recombined it itself seems reason enough to suspect, and then the fact that you want to say use that patent on things you didn't create to control the food supply, to make it singularly that one, that if any corporation wishes to do these sort of things, that seems like something that she rightfully raises the alarm about. So anyway, so that's a general introduction to what the sort of stuff she's going to be talking about. There's a ton more in there. I highly recommend checking out the full hour and 20 length video if you can. Appreciate y'all being with me. As I said, I am on the road, but next week I'll be back with a more thorough write-up and everything. Hope y'all are digging the content still, and hope y'all enjoy Vandana Shiva and Farmer Rishi. Please check those out and start getting saving some kind of seeds if you can, right? That's their basic message. That's something you can do in your home to contribute to this cause. All right, y'all, stay cool.